Welcome to probably the best fitness and nutrition podcast. This is your host, Bradley Schneller, owner of Roux Fitness and Stacked Coaching. Today's special guest is Claire Berry Thomas, Stacked Coaching nutrition coach and Roux Fitness member. In today's episode, Claire discusses women's health and balance when it comes to your life and how to live with your nutrition. If you're interested in balance and nutrition help, check out www.stackedcoaching.com. Also on Stacked Coaching, we offer personalized programming for all of your needs with remote coaching. If you're local and need a gym to do that in, check out Roux.Fitness.
I don't know, some sunshine, and then we have to stay up for the Saints game, which is at 9.
Oh, yeah,
so
sure.
It'll be a long day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We have on our Stacked Coaching coach.
Yeah, something like that.
Claire Berry Thomas. I've known Claire for like 6 years.
Longer, I think.
Longer than 7 years?
Like maybe 8.
Maybe 8 years.
Yeah.
And I just found out her last name was Berry Thomas.
Well, yeah, to be fair, I mean, I just got married like a year ago.
You
so
did,
I just
I didn't think you took Jared's name. I couldn't recall.
Yes, and sometimes I still just say Claire Berry because it's really hard to just say like Berry Thomas, and then sometimes I laugh at when I say it.
Berry Thomas sounds like the name of a band. Like if you had like a kind of like the Revivalists, like that type of band.
I could be that.
You could be
I love
that.
them.
I love that. So, all right, Claire, you have been fitnessing at Roux for 8 years?
I think so.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly, like around there.
Yeah. And you've been a stacked coach, so doing nutrition coaching for a year. Longer.
A little bit longer.
A little bit longer.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with time.
I was going to say, time is just off, though, because of COVID, so it's okay.
Time is definitely. Oh, my God. Hold on a second.
Have we not been recording?
No, it's on. Okay, cool. But this mic came out, so there's that. Technical difficulties. We are not going to do this. Claire, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you tell everybody, what did you do before you started Roux?
Before I started Roux, like in terms of fitness, life. Before I
started
started
in terms of
Roux,
fitness, what'd you do?
So before I started Roux, I ran.
Which you still do.
Which I still do. I do a little bit less of it in some ways and more of it in others.
Yeah.
And I worked out at the college gym at Tulane. Oh, I was on the rowing team too.
Yeah.
That's a fun fact.
How did getting into resistance training change you?
I felt stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely felt stronger. I remember coming into Roux and I was in those 5-finger Vibram shoes, which my brother my brother still wears and loves. He runs in them all the time. I think he just finished his 5th marathon wearing them. So
oh shit.
He does a lot of running in those. I, however, graduated from them maybe. But I remember doing box jumps in those and I felt super comfortable, but then later found out that, people were wondering why I was wearing the shoes. So that's how I came to Roux.
That was a heavy CrossFit shoe back in the day, though. I'll say that.
Yeah.
All right. You touched on, we talked about running, and you said I do a little bit, in some ways a little bit more, in some ways a little bit less. Can you clarify that?
Yes. So I run less during the week. And do more resistance, resistance training during the week, and we'll do longer runs on the weekend. But I think that is a change from what I used to do, which was running more every day. And I would say, so just bringing up my brother from this, he started at a CrossFit affiliate or gym in Missouri, and he just ran his fastest marathon time. And I just ran my fastest half marathon time, but both of us are incorporating the strength training and resistance training into our running, and I think that has made a huge difference.
Yeah. So do you think you're running the same amount of miles or less miles now per week?
Less miles per week.
Less miles per week. And then probably because the way you structure your week, you have more recovery time in between runs as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So typically I'll do maybe 1 or 2 runs during the week if I'm can get to a second run. And then I'll do a longer run on the weekend. So I'm thinking I'm doing 2 or 3 miles on the weekdays and then a longer 8-mile run on the weekend.
All right. What was your half marathon time? You just set your own PR. What was it?
I did 1:51 or something like that. It was like 8 minutes and 30 seconds per mile.
That's
which
fast.
I've never run.
Yeah.
Ever.
That's awesome.
This was the fastest time.
Do you think, my question for you is, because we have a lot of people that are starting to run or they want to be runners, and I do see that they run a little bit too much, but I am not a running coach. I have a general idea of how fitness works and general idea. I know a lot about fitness, but
you know a lot.
I know a lot. But my question for you is, side note, okay, this past, let's say 3 to 6 months, I have not worked out a lot, but my strength has maintained. And so like I can work out 3 to 4 times a week for 30 minutes and maintain the level of strength I had when I was working out an hour every day or longer, right? Because I worked out for a decade like this. Do you think that you have to build up the miles and then you can maintain with less running? Or can you accomplish what you're accomplishing now by starting your training out how it looks now, which is more resistance training, less miles, just how you run is smarter, not harder?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the second, but it would have to be kind of a trial.
Yeah.
And maybe it varies by person. I think everybody is different. I do use an app called Run Coach.
Okay.
And I use Run Coach like loosely. And so they'll suggest days to run and you can choose what days you want to run. And they'll suggest mileage and things like that. So I incorporate that into what I do during the week. But I think that, in terms of running and resistance training, I think it's finding like that balance for what works for your body and rest too. Like as you mentioned before, that rest is really important. Yeah.
I'm going to guess you rest more now than you've ever done before.
Probably. Yeah. I would say in the past, like you're saying, maybe 3 to 4 months, resting more than I did 6 months ago to 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really pushing my body then. And it turns out that wasn't really working for me.
Yeah. And it's different for everybody. I think one of the big things that people don't realize is a lot of people want to emulate the people that are at the top of their sports. So whether it's running or CrossFit or whatever recreational activity you do, okay? And they think, oh, well, the best in the world do this. I should do this. But what they fail to realize is that these people are professionals. And so if they're running, let's say 3 hours multiple times a week, their recovery is also significant. They're also not going to an 8 to 5 job that could be really stressful. They're probably sleeping a lot. They're taking naps. Their nutrition is super dialed in. All these things that as people who do this for fun,
right,
they don't have to deal with.
Yeah. And they have teams of people helping them.
Right.
So I love following Shalane Flanagan, who just ran her 6th marathon in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And a huge accomplishment. And listening to her talk, she was just recently on a podcast as well, and listening to her talk, she has teams of people that are helping her do that. So keeping that in perspective, especially when you're like scrolling through Instagram, and you see these stories that pop up, keeping in perspective, like, okay, what is it that this person puts in to get there? Who do they have helping them get there?
Yeah.
And I think another piece that, we kind of touched on is it
keep going
that you were touching on with rest, and something I think I texted you after the race and I said, what the biggest difference was in this run? And you were like, your nutrition? And I said, no. And you're like, your fitness? And I said, no. I said, it was my self-talk.
Yeah.
Like it was how I talked to myself during that run that made the biggest difference for me.
Can you tell the people the differences?
Yeah. And I shared this story with a friend and she was like shocked. She was like, that's how you talk to yourself? And I said, yeah, like it's crazy sometimes when you get into your own, to saying what you say to yourself and realizing how harmful it is to yourself, right? And so one thought that I had, and being totally vulnerable and putting this out there. One thought that I had was like, oh, you've put on weight since the last half marathon. You won't be able to run as fast as you did before. So,
and you're like, are you telling yourself in training?
That was in training. And so, that morning that I woke up for the run, I just chose to like tackle the run and the race as a race. And I could hear Kevin in the back of my head too saying, this isn't a run, Claire, today. You're out to race. And so I framed it as that, like just one foot in front of the other. And I had a client share that with me recently too, who just finished her first 5K. And she just kept saying, I just kept looking in front of me at like 1 foot in front of the other. And that I think is just how, approaching any kind of fitness goal that you have is just 1 foot in front of the other, trying your best.
I do this weird thing when we are like in an endurance class here at Roux, and let's say it's like 800 meters multiple times with stuff in between. When I'll go on that 800 meter run, I will count backwards from 16 every 100 meters.
Yeah.
So it's not like negative. It's not necessarily positive, but it's like I'm heading towards a goal. Like I'll be like 16.
Yeah.
15. And it just like keeps me going.
You centered
and it's like that
grounded.
Goal is right there. Like 16-1 is not that big of a deal.
Right. I did that yesterday with the bear crawls that we had in the gym.
That was rough.
It was really hard. So I counted back from 20.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm going to make it across the floor in 20, 19. And I just kept like pulling during that countdown to 20. And I got to 0. I still hadn't finished. I was like, okay, let's just keep going for a few more,
Right.
But that's that like bringing in, again, that mindset or what it is that keeps you grounded as you keep working towards your goal.
Yeah. I love that. All right. So the other thing that's changed for you big time over the years is your nutrition.
Yes.
When did that start changing? And then what made you want to get into coaching people via nutrition?
That's a big question.
I know. Let's start with, what was the big change in nutrition for you personally?
So the big change, I would say, happened in joining Roux and realizing just what I wanted my fitness to be at and where I wanted it to be. I always watched my mom struggle with weight and trying different programs. And I, grew up on big beef Mexi melts from Taco Bell and going to, McDonald's in between soccer practice. And those were just the norms. And I think, getting out of college and then starting, teaching, what I really wanted was to foster in the students that I work with, like a healthy view of food.
Yeah.
And so that was important to me, showing up to work and having food that is modeling to them.
Right.
Something attainable for them as well. So I think that was probably the biggest change. Then, wanting to delve more into, I know we all went through, and I talked about this the last time I was on, but we went through like keto and, now I tune all of that out and I just think about our stacked habits and think about at the core, nutrition to me is eating foods that make you feel good. Yeah. That are ingredients themselves.
If you look at the scientific data of what foods do what to you, and you realize that a lot of the fear mongering out there is not based in science, it changes your perspective on how you eat, and now you can focus on habits and hey, if I want to have this muffin, I'm going to have this muffin. It's fine, right? And I think that's a big discovery for a lot of us, because you look at all this other stuff and it's like, how sustainable is keto? How sustainable is this? I hear people all the time saying, I was having dinner with someone last night and they were talking about how they just weren't happy with their aesthetic. And he followed that up with, I'm barely eating any carbs every day. And I'm like, maybe that's your problem, right? But it's just like.
But also maybe you're not feeling good and energized because you're not having those carbs, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's twofold.
You might not know even that the reason you're low energy is because you're not fueling yourself with food that you need because you think that this other diet is going to work for you.
Yeah, and so people are afraid of calories. People are afraid of carbs.
People are so afraid of carbs.
Yeah, and I'm
still afraid of carbs.
I feel good about carbs. I'm like afraid of fats.
I feel the success of carbs, but I still, for some reason, it's hard to incorporate. It's just hard to shift out of that mindset.
Right.
Sometimes.
No, I get it. But it's like, for example, when I do a cut and I cut 20% of my calories, which a lot of those calories come from carbs when I'm cutting, and you feel the massive energy downshift.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? And it's like, people live like this, you know, and they're kind of stuck, and you don't realize until you start increasing your calories on purpose slowly over time that how much it lifts up your energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm feeling a carb crash coming right now.
You were talking about kids earlier. How is that going for you, fostering that, like? Because you work in a school. How's that going?
Yeah, I work in a school, and at our school now we have a wonderful partnership with the Emerald Lagasse Foundation, and so we actually have a culinary garden and teaching kitchen.
That's really cool.
Which is phenomenal. So it's really exciting. The other day, the students made guacamole, and it's so cool to just see them like learning knife skills.
Yeah.
Taking that home and practicing that at home, making like fruit salad. It's been great to see that. I think now my role, I work more directly with teachers. So I always try and have like snacks for them when they come to team meetings that they're always like, oh, what's the snack of the day, Claire? Like, what is it? Where's it from? And I, again, try to have that balance of like, here's something that's going to be filling carb and have some protein too to keep you full for the rest of the day.
What I really love about everything you're saying is the focus isn't on weight. It's not any like negative connotation. He's all the positives about food. Let us teach you about food. Like those things work really well in children. When I talk to my son, because my daughter is kind of too young to understand. She's 4, but she's slowly picking up what we're laying down. But when I talk to my son about food, I teach him about what carbs do, what proteins do, and what fats do, and why they're all necessary for your plate. And I actually teach him that there needs to be balance throughout the day. So like I am cool with, Brennan eating a cookie every single day. But I ask him, I'm like, hey man, how much protein did you have today? Like, did we get those building blocks we need for our body? And we talk about food in terms of proteins, carbs, and fats. Nothing bad about it. I don't limit anything. Yesterday he had a fried chicken biscuit from Willa Jean. And I tasted it. It was delicious. So like he can do whatever he wants. I just want him to understand how food works in the body. You mentioned the thing about the kids learning knife skills. I remember watching, I think it was a Gwyneth Paltrow Goop Lab episode where they were highlighting this community in some Central or South American country. I can't recall, but like 5-year-olds picking up machetes and cutting coconuts. And after watching that, I'm like, dang, I need to let my kids venture out a little bit. So my daughter wields a steak knife, and I watch her. Right, I watch her with a close eye, but like I'm starting to let her cut things a little bit with a real knife because I want her to learn, how to handle it. What are the negatives? Don't do this, don't do that. But like this is how you use it, what you use it for, etc. And so it's a lot of fun. Like I really incorporate my kids in cooking, whether we're making pizza from scratch or smoking some chicken or something like that. I let them season the food, but that's super helpful. So, all right, nutrition. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
All right. I look at you as the stacked coaching women's health guru.
Thanks. I'm still learning.
Yeah,
learning a lot.
Everybody's always learning.
Yeah.
It sounds silly saying, how did you become interested in this? But like, I don't know if every female is super interested in actually how their health works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I became interested and, in part with the journey through nutrition for me, I became interested in like why I wasn't getting my period at certain times, and then why would I? And through keto that happened, and through carb cycling that happened, and so trying to figure out what was going on with my body. And, through that experience, I learned about Dr. Stacy Sims and her book Roar, and read more and have gotten more involved just in learning more about women's health and the period, our periods. And
should I call it the period or the menstrual cycle? I generally call it the cycle, but I can call it the period if you think I should.
I think you should call it whatever you feel comfortable with, but I think we need to get comfortable acknowledging that this is something that happens for women, and that it is also, something we need to talk about. Because we need to talk about if it's not happening. We need to talk about if it's happening and you're experiencing really bad, cramping or blood. And Jared would just cringe right now if he heard me talking about blood, which I'm sure you're doing on the inside too. But the thing is, it's something that happens, right? And I think we don't talk about it enough as women. And I've always wanted to come on the podcast and talk about it.
Well, here we are. Let's get into it. So, all right, you initially lost your period doing keto.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How long did you lose it for?
So, I am not exactly sure then how long it was for. I have a friend who she and I talk a lot just about our period, and a couple of friends. So thank you to all my friends who like to talk about that with me. And
for the record, I've jammed quite often about your period.
Yeah.
You and I have. So
I'll say I'm not getting it. I am. Right. But I think the most significant thing that happened, because I think a lot of the time when we're not getting our period as women, we're told oh, that's great.
Who's
that's
saying
so
that?
Great for you that you don't have those side effects.
Other women telling other women that.
Yeah,
right.
You're not experiencing the cramps, and you're not experiencing the, all the things that go along with it. And while yes, that's great that you're not having those experiences, at the same time, it means that something is not functioning correctly in your body. And hearing that from a professional doctor saying it's not okay for you not to get your period, made me just stop in my tracks and be okay, so what do I have to do to help myself get it back?
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah. So I went 6 months this past year not getting my period at all.
I felt a lot of pressure during that time.
But the biggest thing was when I took all of that pressure off.
Right.
And I just rested. And the friend that I'm talking about too, she and I will talk frequently about the effect that rest has on the body. And so sometimes it's just needing to rest, whether that's resting from tracking macros, whether that's resting from exercise, whether that's resting from your stressful job, whatever that rest looks like for you, and figuring out what that is, I think is so important.
Can you pinpoint what made you lose it?
I can't say that. Well, I have an idea. I don't know that it's this for sure. But in the scheme of, tracking and, trying to figure out at this time, so probably 6 months ago, I was very stressed at work, probably the most stressed that I've been, teaching kindergarten and trying
I've heard your stories. It was
to work in the
stressful as hell.
school.
Yeah.
And so the stress was a lot. And then on top of that stress, something I know of myself to do that I will do is try and control things, right? And so the greatest control that I had was in tracking macros. But I think that in that sense, at that time, it was not what was best for me. So reflecting back on that and thinking okay, here I am trying to manage the stress of life while also continuing to track. My body fat percent dropped, I think, too low for what is normal for me, for what I need to have my cycle.
I think that's important for everyone to listen to what you just said. Can you repeat that?
Yes, that body fat percentage was important for me. And every body's body fat percent is going to be different.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, I've been able to track that and to see really, and again, that's where I feel the data is so important to see okay, here's where I didn't get it. Here's where I did. Here's where I didn't.
That's
and being able
so
to see, okay, every time I didn't get it, it was because I was below this percent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And it was crazy because I consulted with a lot of colleagues of mine on that, and people that know far more information than me, and they were like, this is weird because she's eating
a lot. I was eating a ton.
2,000 plus calories a day, but it's like a combination of things, right? Like stress, body fat percentage.
I even went to my gynecologist, and she was like, well, maybe you just need to eat more. And I was like, do you want me to show you what I'm eating during the day? Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it was just that I'd worked myself into this stressful environment. And I was like, I like to refer to this time in my life as I was humming. Like, I know we're like the Hummer, but I was like humming. Like, it was like, I was just like here. Like I was going,
yeah.
And so I needed to bring everything down.
Right.
And my body just needed some rest. But the most crucial thing that I think happened was a friend of mine saying you just don't seem like yourself. And it's amazing what somebody saying that, the effect that can have on you if you allow it, if you allow yourself to listen to the people around you. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not myself. I wonder what are those things that made her say that. And so reflecting on that and checking in with her about what is it that makes you think that I'm not myself? And she was just like, you just seem really stressed.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay.
Did you journal throughout this, or?
Did I journal? I journaled off and on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so could you look back and recognize you not being yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think a piece of that is I was still trying to do all of the things that I'd done before. I meditate every morning. I come to the gym. But again, that internal dialogue was just very different than it is now.
So reflecting back on that, how, one of the core habits of Stacked is minimizing stress. Mm-hmm. And we talk about a lot of different ways about that. The interesting thing is that technically you were doing all these things and it wasn't helping. Your period was still, not there. Your stress was still through the roof. So what was the action item besides stop tracking macros that you took to reduce that stress?
So the work changed, the job changed.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. Is it the source of the stress? Did we go there and hit that,
Sometimes it's that, recognizing the triggers for stress as well. And the things that were triggering me sometimes were things that people were saying to me.
Can you give an example?
And this is another thing I think we look for a lot when we're talking about nutrition is validation and validation from the outside, right? And so people could see that things had changed with me, but they were also validating it in a way which I knew was triggering for me. Oh, Claire, I remember going to this one party and somebody said to me what did she said something about oh, that's what, if that's what a nutrition coach looks like then I want to keep doing that. It was a very innocent comment.
Almost like a compliment.
It was like a compliment. But it was I could tell that everybody was talking about it, right? And while I think at times, we want to hear that validation from outside sources and we want to know okay, people notice that I'm losing weight. People notice that, I'm putting in hard work. I think there's a difference between putting in hard work and acknowledging that somebody's losing weight. Noticing the effort versus
you want
the
people
results.
You want people to notice the effort.
Right. And I wasn't necessarily putting in the effort right then. It was more the stress of things that was going on. Right.
Yeah.
So, I think, I don't know, I just went on this tangent of sorts. So I don't know, just draw me back to where I was because I sort of.
Well, I was asking about action items. So the work stopped.
The work stopped. The work changed. That was a trigger, and recognizing that the source of people commenting, recognizing that was having an effect, I had to acknowledge. So I think acknowledging those things helped me.
How did you move past that? Because it's something you have to deal with internally. You can't deal with it unless you just straight up people hey, please don't comment about my weight. Short of that.
Yeah.
How did you overcome it internally?
I overcame it by acknowledging to myself that people were going to say comments and make comments, and had to ask myself, like, why that mattered to me. Like, why does this matter to you? And when I didn't, really have an answer for myself, I had to kind of dig into that and journal. Like, why is this? Yeah.
I've been carrying a little tiny notebook around with me. I've talked about it before. When I go on walks, I take this notebook with me because I'm walking. Mm-hmm. I can stop and write something down if I want to, if I think about it. And I've been dealing with a lot of feelings, and my therapist said something similar to me. Like, when you're feeling something, I want you to ask yourself, why are you feeling it, and dig down. And so, like, if I'm in my car, I'll pull over.
Yeah.
Or like, I'll wait to a stoplight and I'll write down, like, what am I feeling? How does it feel? Like, what is the physical sensation of that
where you
feeling?
Feel in your body.
Yeah. Where do you feel in your body, and why? Like, what are our reasons we're trying to feel that? And I haven't really quite figured out what to do with that yet. But identifying it has been helpful.
And I think you just touched on something. Like, I think that so often we are looking for something to do with our feelings. Like, we're so action oriented. We want something to do with them. Instead of just like acknowledging, like, right now, this is how I'm feeling, and I'm moving through this feeling right now. Like, the other morning I woke up and, Jared could tell that I was not myself. And he asked, like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. Then later I said, like, I'm feeling sad. And he was like, why? And I said, I don't know. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling sad. I'm just feeling this way. And he said, what can I do, to help? And I said, nothing. There's really nothing right now. I just need to be sad for a little while. I think that, we're always looking for something to do with our feelings. So I want to acknowledge too, through this, past 6 to 8 months, and probably when I started with the stress at work, and I put myself into that stressful role at work because I was trying to avoid some feelings that I was having around a friend who had a diagnosis of cancer. Mm-hmm. And so it's really been unraveling all of those feelings and how I tried to control not wanting to feel sad, not wanting to feel angry, not wanting to feel all those things. And having to allow myself to feel that has been hard. But I can also tell for my body and for myself, it's been what's been the most important thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, like, I am a person that I'm not patient. Okay, like, I am not patient.
You just want to get to
right. Like,
the next thing.
When something happens, like, I want to take action. Like, I want to fix it. Mm-hmm. Right. I want to go from 0 to 100 like that. Okay. And I'm in a situation right now, if I'm dealing with some stuff where, like, I feel helpless. Mm-hmm. And I know that if I try to manage the situation, it's only going to get worse. Right. And so, like, I am working like crazy to get comfortable with my feelings and where I am and do nothing.
Right. Working on doing nothing.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people for that?
I think something that you said earlier, before we started the podcast, just reaching out for support, like reaching out to people, right? Yeah. Because though, we need to sit with feelings and sometimes do nothing, it doesn't mean that we can't talk about that experience and what that's like. So I think it's reaching out to people that will support you and listen, and journal and write and acknowledge, like, and sometimes doing nothing is really hard. Like, I found myself the past couple of days, even just preparing for a break, that, like, okay, what am I going to do over break? Like, what are the things that I need to do? I'm like, I just need to do nothing. Like, I need to allow myself periods of time where I'm doing nothing and there's not expectations on myself. Yeah.
I like it. So in this journey to discover, like, why you lost your period, getting it back, et cetera, did you learn anything else? Like, can we talk about, how that experience can help other women?
Yeah, I've learned that tracking is really important. So if you're listening to this and you're not tracking your period, I think tracking your period is really important. I think reaching out to your doctor if you notice anything that's changed or different, and then continuing to bring that up, even when it doesn't seem acknowledged by the doctor, like continuing to bring up, like, this is something that's important to you, and finding a different doctor.
That's what I was going to say. Like, if they're just like keep avoiding that, just find a different doctor.
Yeah. But being comfortable talking about that. If you have a nutrition coach, being comfortable bringing that up to your coach and talking with your coach about it in terms of.
It's normal.
Right.
It's not taboo.
And in terms of the experiences too that you'll have, like, you know, I know now what my body feels like when it's like getting ready for its period. And I know I can kind of tell from like the mood that I'm in, like, okay, maybe my period's coming now, or I may be like a little bit more gassy or bloated. Right. And so I make notes of those things and keep track of that. And now when I start to feel that, I'm like, oh, I think it's, you know, this part of my cycle. And then the day comes that I like have my period and I'm like, oh, this is great. Wonderful. Body, like, thank you, body, for telling me that like this was going to happen. So I think, you know, if you're listening, definitely reaching out if you're having, you know, to a doctor, if you're having any, you know, problems or experiencing anything different, whether that's not getting your period or some really bad side effects. And then also if you're in coaching, to reach out to us to let us know, like, you know, what's going on so that we can help around those times of the month too, that you maybe are experiencing different side effects.
Most of my clients are actually female, and they've done a pretty good job of putting in their tracker when their cycle is, period. And we probably notice like weight fluctuations occur 2 to 3 days prior to them actually getting their period. And then the water weight comes off immediately. But it's just good for them to know what's happening. And I really like that they journal that. And so we can see time to time. It's also like weighing yourself every day. Like there's a benefit to that. Like they know what's happening. They're not freaked out when it happens.
Right. Yeah, you see that water retention, which happens around that time too. So yeah, definitely important. In
terms of women's health, any other things you want to
add? No, I think, you know, there's a lot of information, I think, coming out now about women's health. A friend just recommended another podcast by Dr. Jen Gutner, and she talks a lot about the language we use around women's health and why that can be harmful. And so, you know, I think acknowledging that we've mostly, like in our culture, have been raised to think and talk about our cycle as like taboo and not okay to talk about. And I think
I've had my period. It's like hush.
Yeah. And it's also like, you know, I think there's just a mentality, and it does suck sometimes. Like it does. Sometimes, you know, like you don't feel your best. Sometimes you don't feel, you know, the greatest, and that's okay. Like it's natural. And I think there are just some things that as a culture, if we can just start to shift our perspective on that for women, it would change. It would change how we talk about and how we think about ourselves too.
Any language you can cite that we should avoid?
Anything harmful?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Anything harmful. Yeah. Like talking about it in a negative way.
Yeah. And I think just checking in with, you know, people about what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like you were asking earlier in terms of like, is it period or cycle? Like, I feel comfortable using either right now until I learn otherwise.
Got you.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you know, if somebody can inform me if that is okay too, you know.
That's fantastic. All right. Let's get to the last thing, our giant debate about balance. Which my views have changed a little bit. So I read this book called The One Thing, and I'm a big fan of it. And it talks about, and this is where our argument came up.
But I didn't also know that you were reading this book.
You didn't know. So like,
things.
Right. And so it's interesting is because like, you didn't understand my perspective, and I wasn't clear about what my perspective was.
Right.
And this book is about like success, whether it's success in your career, success in your life, success athletically, however that looks. And for that, it's like trying to find balance among anything is not going to put you over the top for that one thing. And what Claire is talking about is balance in life. And so, like, I really think there needs to be a discussion on what you're trying to accomplish in that moment versus overall. So, like, when Claire and I talk about balance.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it from a perspective of, like, feeling complete in what you're doing, but feeling balanced in the things that you do, right?
Yeah.
Like, feeling like, you can have the cookie balanced with the rest of your meals that you're having during the day.
Yeah.
Right? You're allowing yourself that balance Yeah,
it's... I've thought about that a lot recently. I'm reading this book called The Way of the Superior Man. And
is this the other quote you posted on Instagram today?
Yeah, I posted this quote.
Yeah, I almost messaged about that one too. So.
Yeah, I posted it today. No. Yeah.
Now I'm curious about that one.
It's really good. Like, and it's females are encouraged to read it, and it's about relationships. And it's not necessarily like man and woman. It could be man and man. Like, everybody has a role to play in their relationship, the masculine and the feminine, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a male and a female. It could be female and female, male and male, but it's about energy. And energy balances between the two partners. But one of the things it talks about, and I just thought this is interesting, if you go all in on work and avoid your family, you're going to lose or miss out, right? If you go all in on your family and avoid work, the same thing's going to happen, right? Like, your family needs to see, like, kids learn from observing and osmosis. They don't learn...
Yeah, what you're modeling.
Right, what you're modeling. They don't learn from you just being around and coddling them all the time. So, like, if you are not providing, your kids will see that. Like, and so there needs to be balance between all those things. Like, you need to kick butt and have balance doing those things. But it similarly comes with food and where we talk about it and where I agree with you. And this throws the entire book that I read, the one thing, because it's separate from this discussion. So we'll just get it there. So I'm in with Claire on balance. Because when we talk about it from a nutrition standpoint, first of all, like, I don't want to think of balance as like this teeter-totter or seesaw, scale. Right? Yeah, it's not that. Okay. If you avoid certain foods all the time, you are most certainly set to fail, upon the first time you get reintroduced to that, or it could send you into a free fall. Go ahead, take over for me.
No, I think when we've talked about balance like that in terms of nutrition, it is, I think, a balance of nutrition and fitness and like the things that you're doing in life, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had clients who, in terms of their nutrition, want to like be able to go eat out with their families, but they, sometimes they don't feel like they can because, they're trying to track this or, want to reach this goal. And I talk a lot with them about balance, right? Because they need to be able to do those things and have those moments with their family. But how can they balance that with their goals? And sometimes that means, eating something different than what their family eats when they go out to eat, but they're still going with their family. They're still enjoying the meal out with them.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means not like enjoying everything that they're at with their family, and something is changed during the day that they ate, right? So it's just balancing what they do with their nutrition during the day.
Yeah, I think we find that our most successful clients have a healthy balance of all the things we just discussed.
Yeah.
Right? Like food, fitness, recovery.
Yeah, they're balancing all those habits.
Yeah, sleep, stress, all those things. When your life is calm, you're getting a good amount of sleep. You're not killing yourself in the gym. You're taking rest days, which we like to call build days. Because that's when your muscles are building. And your nutrition is 85-90% effort. Like, you're gonna crush it.
Right.
You're going to absolutely crush it.
And then something's going to change. And then
life changes.
Your kid's going to be up all night, or then something happens. And so, I talk with clients too all the time about why they have to choose a habit every week. And I say to them, because things are changing in your life every week. And so no habit is going to stay the same. And whether that's, looking at your sleep differently or seeing what else you can put in place. When Ida happened, right? Lots of things changed. And so the way our habits were changed because we were in different places or we were doing different things. And so, I think talking with clients about that balance and how that constantly is shifting, and we're constantly having to kind of look at what they're doing and change it just a little bit from week to week.
Yeah. So I talked a lot about my experiences over the past few months, and I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast or before, but I talked about not being able to work out for a full hour over the last 3 or 4 months. And yesterday was the first day that I did in a long time. And it felt really good, but I did not have the mental energy or the physical energy to be able to work out past 35 minutes. Just wasn't going to happen. So I countered that by making sure I got 10,000 steps every day.
Yeah.
Because I could.
That was you balancing.
Yeah, I could do that. And that kept me going. That little bit right there was what I needed to just stay afloat during this transition in my life. And I think people need to recognize these transitions, know that it's okay that through this current stage in my life, I may not be optimal me, but I'm going to hang in there so that one day I can be optimal me again.
Right. And you're balancing, I think the other important part of that is saying you're balancing what you know you can, the energy you can put into something, but you're setting a boundary around that too. You're not pushing yourself past your boundary and past your limit. And so I think that's really important too for people to recognize when a boundary is or when a limit is.
Yeah.
And when we need to set those so that we're able to continue to put forth energy into the other parts of our day that we need to.
I love that. Let's end there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, y'all. You can find Claire at Stacked Coaching. She's one of our nutrition coaches. She's fantastic. She has changed my mom's life, and I'll be forever appreciative of that.
Your mom changed my life too.
Oh, I love that. that. Claire, where can people find you on social media?
That's a great question. So you know how this all started, the balance thing, is because my handle for the is that what it's called?
Yep.
For Instagram? Okay.
Yep.
Was at Fed, Fit, and Balanced. And so I remember now, that's how our conversation about balance starts. So that's my public Instagram account.
At Fed, Fit, and Balanced. I love it, y'all. All right. Hope you have a great day. Hope you were able to take something positive away from this. Peace, y'all.